Good evening, good people. I'm your host, Calvin Anderson, for the Check In With podcast. We have an amazing guest with us today. Bola Sol is a qualified financial advisor, author of Your Money Life, and the founder of Rich Girl Chronicles, a growing platform dedicated to empowering women to build wealth through financial literacy and personal development. With her recent milestone of educating over 1 million women, Bola continues her mission to support women in achieving financial independence and confidence. She recently appeared on ITV's This Morning, sharing her top 5 tips for money management, reinforcing her commitment to reach even more women by 2025. Bola studied mathematics and finance at the University of Essex, where she has been recognized as an Essex hero for her ongoing contributions since graduating. In 2017, she launched the Bola Sol Show, a platform amplifying essential discussions on wealth, mental health, and relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, give a super warm welcome to Bola Sol. Bola, how are you?
Oh, I'm well, thank you. Thank you for such a lovely introduction. How are you doing?
I am very well. It is an honor to host you this evening, and I'm looking forward to hearing your knowledge, your insight, and for the listeners to hear that also. Bola, give us your beginning, give us your origin. Why the financial game? Why the financial world? What was it that sparked you to get into this role and get into this place?
I think, first of all, I was always really good with numbers, and I learned that numbers were naturally very important, and deeply correlated to finance, accounting, and so on. So it just seemed like a natural course for me. My eldest brother used to be an accountant. He's kind of switched roles now. Um, and he was someone that, and is still someone that I admire very much. So as a result, I just felt like it was a bit of a natural alignment. Numbers just came so easy to me. And then I wanted to know about money. I wanted to know how it works because I just remember being younger and feeling like, look, money is clearly really important to adults. I always remember feeling that, like, wow, these
Mm.
people are busy.
Yeah.
I was like, these people are busy and they have to get somewhere by a certain time. It's quite serious.
Mm.
And a lot of that has to do with money.
Yes.
So essentially, I just kind of grouped the two and said, yeah, I'm going to learn about this. And over time, it's become somewhat of a second language to me. Whereas, that does take time, but I've been learning about finance ever since I was 16, studying accounting and so on. So it has become second nature, but I know that's not the case for everyone. And that's exactly why I do what I do.
Amazing. That is such a impactful story. um, and journey as well, Bola. Bola, for anyone that listens to you today and they want to go down the path of becoming a financial advisor, what advice would you give to them?
Advice: don't feel like you have to follow traditional routes. When I was fresh out of university, people suggested, do I want to become a financial advisor? And that was not something I wanted to do straight away, and it's not something I did. There was other paths I wanted to explore within finance, and I'm glad that I did that. So I'd say don't feel like you have to also come from a finance background, but the key is that, you're willing to do the work, and the work can be hard and it can be tough. It's a lot of learning. However, that's what I'd say. Don't feel like, oh, because this person has an accounting background or this person understands economics, of course it makes sense that, they've gone to get their diploma of financial advisory. That's not the case at all.
Bola, I want to get into a few topics with you.
Yeah.
Please give us the psychology of being told no and the impacts it has on you in later life.
The impacts it has on you in later life. That's such, I know the first part is the psychology of being told no. But the impacts it has on you in later life is so important. There's there's something that happens, in my opinion, when you're younger and you don't understand the why behind a no. Now, if you take into consideration things such as how you've grown up, so for example, where you grew up and what your economic standing was at the time you were growing up, there could be a plethora of reasons why you're told no. And it may not have anything to do with your financial status. But for many people, I think they've attributed that no with that. Sometimes it is for other reasons, but for many people, if it's, hey, look, can I go on a school trip? And it costs this much, it could be no, because maybe they don't have the money, or it's not a priority in comparison to everything else. It could be that. Let's be honest, when we were in school, I don't know about you, but naturally, I think when I was in school, I found it a lot harder to say to stand out in terms of I kind of needed the trendy things that the
Agree.
other kids. That was
Definitely.
that was so important. I do not care for it as an adult
Yeah.
in the same way. Like, I don't need to have something everybody has as an adult, because I find that I've gotten so much better at thinking as an individual.
Mhm.
But the notion of, so it could be like kickers. Okay, everyone's wearing kickers. Yeah, you want to wear kicker shoes, or everyone's,
Because, wow,
yeah, taking you back, right?
taking you back.
Yeah, and you kind of feel, and do you know what? I'm not gonna lie, kickers are good shoes.
They are.
That one thing I remember that is etched in my brain. If you bought kickers, you couldn't deny that they were solid and they would last.
Yeah, the quality,
Yep,
amazing.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then there was the Just Do It bags, which after a while, to be fair, they actually weren't as good as, a sturdy backpack, but no one wanted to have a big backpack.
No,
But I find that
sense.
exactly, and being told no, that kind of early experience and conditioning, it can shape how we view boundaries, authority, and rejection.
Yeah.
So for example, if no is, it depends on how it's used and how it's taught to you, because a lot of the times, many of us, I think, with our parents or guardians, how do I say it? It's like there may not have been explanation, because they may think it's not a child's place to know why. And I think that that's changing, especially as someone who teaches money to different age groups.
Yeah.
For example, I now encourage parents and guardians, please speak to your kids about money from as early as 4. Make them understand certain things. Now, they don't need to understand tax and everything, but just the why behind it. Whereas, I'm Nigerian born, and my mother and father moved here from Nigeria. So we're first generation in this country. Sometimes there isn't that time and space
Yeah.
to explain. They could naturally be tired from work. I mean, I've had a long day at work today. I'm tired. I cannot imagine if after all of this, someone's asking me, can I get the latest kickers? Or can I get this? And maybe I don't have the money, and then having to explain it. But I feel, your delivery on it is so important.
Mm.
Uh, and I just say, rejection, it's a very significant part of life. But for many, it does create a sense of unworthiness that can linger into adulthood.
Most certainly can.
Yeah. And, from a financial perspective, this can, of course, manifest into people being afraid to ask for pay rises, to negotiate better deals, or take calculated risks, right?
Yeah.
If you're constantly told no, you may internalize that you're not good enough or you don't deserve more. Um, And I think it's so important to think about how you can break free from, that cycle, and reframe rejection as an opportunity to grow. There's many ways in which no can manifest itself. I've kind of spoken about it first in terms of how meek it can make you,
Mm.
choices in career and so on. However, it can it can also foster a bit of a different side, where you then feel that you now have to give yourself everything.
Hmm.
It can turn to, I couldn't have this when I was younger, so I do have to have it in adult. And a lot of times, what many of us need to think about is, are we saying yes to ourselves today, or are we saying yes to ourselves 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 10 years ago?
Wow.
And that's what we have to think about with some of our decisions. And I grew up in Brixton, South London, pre-gentrification. That's really important to say.
Yeah.
That it was pre-gentrification, and I saw what it was like. If just thinking of a random guy, like, he gets to a certain point, and then he now has all the trainers, for example, that he can get, or I don't know, a woman maybe can get certain jewelry, or I think jewelry is the first thing that came to mind, or handbags, for example.
Yeah.
A lot of that can, it's a physical embodiment of past rejection, of things that maybe as well you have felt unworthy, maybe because of the area you've come from, or maybe you even wanted to fit in with the popular girls. And that's what that no can also be. It's not just a no from your parents or guardians, it could be no from the popular girls, or maybe the people even who were in a maybe a different economic status to you or treated you differently.
Yeah.
And now say, this is my get back. This is my form of revenge. I will show it through possessions. And I'm not just talking about, trainers and bags and jewelry, as I said, but it can also be things like, I'm going to get a big house. I'm going to get a big car. I'm going to show you what this is, because it's so important that you see me this way. And, so I always say that rejection and kind of the psychology of being told no, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. But yeah, I'd love a bit of your opinion on that before I keep going.
To be fair, Bola, when you mentioned in terms of being told no at a younger age, and then now you're at an age where you can actually say yes to yourself, then you said about who's actually saying the yes. Is it you now presently at your age, or is it the younger you who was told no and didn't get the things that they weren't allowed it at that time? And to splurge, and because you're making your own money, or you're getting money from different sources, you're now indulging into that no that wasn't fulfilled. And I
Mm.
think it's so key when you mentioned about the impact in the different ways that the no can have, whether it's the no from the parents, whether it's the no from the friends, whether it's the no from uh, the popular girls or the popular guys, the no from whoever. And then ultimately, what that does is, as you said, it creates an internal no, the no that is still echoing in the ages that you gain from being 14 to now being 24. That
Mm.
no still there, but because you now have access to money, you're working, or whatever the situation is, your yes still becomes louder, even though the no is still there being present. So definitely, like you said, it's a double-edged sword. And I think it's so um key to find out who's actually speaking for you at that time when money's in your hands and you can have access to these things. Is it younger you with their eyes lit up like a candy store, or is it the you now where you have responsibilities, you got to pay your bills on time, you got to make sure your direct debits are set up? So I really think that was powerful that you said that, and it touched upon a lot of things. There's people listening probably now that's just like, you know what, I need to really like get a handle on my money situation. I really need to tell myself no, even though I want to say yes.
Yeah. Another way that something that comes up again, I kind of spoke about, is popularity,
Yeah.
and social spending. So, for example, if you are someone who you didn't have much popularity before, maybe you weren't the person who was asked to go to people's birthday parties and so on. Is it now that, maybe you're the person who's like, hey, come to dinner, come to brunch, whatever the whatever the time of day is, you now feel like you have to socially spend. Again, no can show up in a plethora of ways.
Mm. I love that. Talk to us more on the social aspect of spending, because that is something that I guess everyone can relate to. You have a group of friends. Speak to us on the social aspect of spending, Bola.
Yeah, so I would say, culture and social norms, we look at spending is usually tied to celebrations, traditions, and bonding naturally, holidays, birthdays, or you just want to dine out. But I think social settings, it can naturally encourage overspending,
Mm.
uh, especially when you entangle it with emotions. And
Yes.
at times it can even just be positive spending. You're just happy to be there. Or you've had a long day or a long week or a long month, and at the end of it, it's just the not just the bonding part, but it's also the costly part. So it can be somewhat of a peer pressure that people can face, even if they're not in the position to keep up with others. Or, for example, I've had quite a few dilemmas, or read as well.
Yeah.
Uh, some people, they do different things career wise. So maybe, I don't know, one's in law, one's in tech as an engineer, and then someone's in a job where, let's just say, because I do get these dilemmas often, they work in the NHS and, they can't go out as often. Um, there's that peer pressure, but I always say you've got to reflect on the fine line between being generous with your time and money and, compromising your financial well-being to keep up appearances.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's incredibly important.
Very important. But what would you say to someone who is struggling with that and they need to look at or do some child work in terms of how they were with their relationship with money when they were younger to their current age now? What would you say they have to do in terms of that work and process?
I think if they have the means, it's definitely worth going to therapy about. At times, you need an open space to reflect in full detail about, you know, your choices. And if you don't, then potentially journal. I would say maybe think about old memories and go from what's causing you to react the way you do today and how did you feel at the time. What are some, key staple memories that it sticks with you and you think to yourself, this caused me to feel that way, and then just continue kind of writing and exploring that.
But tell me about your no to yourself. How has that developed over the time frame of, like you mentioned, being in Brixton to now being in a very different space? How has your no evolved with you?
Oh no, I think no has evolved through traveling. I've never been super big on possessions. I think yeah, I'm not a fan of clutter. I'm not a minimalist, but I can't do the clutter thing. It just really bothers me.
Yeah.
So the notion of having more things has never appealed to me. But travel has. I didn't really grow up traveling. I went to Nigeria and back, but I think the older I got, the more I realized that my no comes in the form of it wasn't even an option. Sometimes our no's come in the form of we weren't even aware that this was a thing. For example, like when people say they went on family holidays, I've never gone on a family holiday, and I don't I don't count going back to where you're from as a family holiday.
Yeah.
So that to me doesn't count because it's not an exploration. It's a return.
And
Um,
you can't even skip over that part. You
yeah.
just said it's not an exploration, it's a return. Speak on that, please. That's very powerful.
When you go, and it reminds me of the same when they say go back to where you're from. You're literally
Mm.
going back to where you're from. That place is not foreign to you. Now I know that there are some people who they have never they may be from somewhere, Nigeria, Jamaica, Ghana. It could be anywhere in the world, but they've never been there. They live in another part of the world. Either way, no matter what, wherever you're from still lives in a part of your home. It's still. I know people who they've never been to Nigeria, and I'm like, you are one of the most Nigerian people I've ever met. So for me, I'm not opening a map when I go to Nigeria. I'm not suggesting, 10 things to do. I might be looking at what's current and what's worth exploring, but there's a sense of belonging there, as opposed to when you go somewhere else where you're like, wow, this is completely new to me. All I can say is I have a friend from here. That's all I know, and they've suggested places. So I think that your mind is naturally a bit more curious than when you return home.
Bola, speak to me now on the attachment and boundaries when it comes to money.
So I spoke about this in my book, Your Money Life.
Yeah.
Uh, I find, especially for women, that boundaries can be a really big issue. But if I start with the attachment to money, there's definitely an emotional relationship we all have with money. People, develop different types of relationships, whether they feel a sense of security
Yeah.
or control or fear. And one of the things again I'd say is, our upbringing and early experiences, that's what helps kind of highlight and shape those attachments. And I would say as well, one of the things that we always have to explore with our attachment to money is money as a separate identity to us. A lot of people at times can attach their self-worth to their net worth or to how much they make. I've seen that before, and it's so terrible for your emotional health. Let's say, for example, you see me next week in a coffee shop and I don't want to say on six figures, because being on six figures in the UK is definitely not what it used to be.
100%.
But let's say, for example, you see me next week and I'm a millionaire.
Yeah.
And the way I treat you is very much like I do not really have Calvin's time. I've got 2 minutes, and it's basically now like I'm busy. I'm now in a different world of busyness and time because of how much money I have, because I'm a millionaire. But
Yeah.
then maybe 2 weeks later you see me and my self-worth has completely dropped. I'm now speaking to you. Hi, how are you? What are you up to? Who I am shouldn't change as a result of how much money I have. Now, I know we all go through different periods of highs and lows, and money can be a factor of it. But who you are shouldn't stem from this is what I have, because money is somewhat of a flow and no one owns it. So I think it's really key that people are quite careful with that. And I want to quickly touch on a scarcity versus abundance mindset.
Please.
Scarcity, for anyone who doesn't know, it's believing that there's never enough, or there's only enough for a small group of people, and that's a bit like a crabs in a bucket mentality that some people can have.
Yeah.
Whereas, and at times having a scarcity mindset can lead to hoarding or over saving, which I've seen sometimes. It's never enough, or I have to get more and this or that, or I don't want to share anything. So, for example, let's say I did a quiz now,
Yeah.
and that quiz led me to pay off my mortgage early. And it's like, oh, I don't want to give you the details of that quiz, because what happens if there's not enough for us to go around? It just, that's that type of mentality some people have. They always think that there is a lack of resources, which is such a shame.
Mm.
And of course, then there's the abundance mindset, which encourages healthier financial decisions, such as even sometimes letting go of your money. Again, realizing it is a flow. It's not always supposed to stay with you,
Yeah.
but you're supposed to say, okay, I let go of this for whatever reason, and I know more will come to me. I definitely think that money needs to be viewed that way. And I definitely just want to touch on the need for boundaries, especially personal boundaries.
Yeah.
Think a lot of people, again, they have challenges that arise when family or friends can rely on them financially, whether it's lending money or covering bills or feeling obligated to pay their way. So I know some people who felt obligated to pay for certain things, maybe, or jokes have been made because they make good amounts of money and everyone knows. So then it's almost like they begin looking at that person,
Yeah.
which is, I just think that's so terrible, because I always say, I've learned so much from talking about finance. You have no idea what someone is going through. Both Sue
100%.
and I could be on the same salary.
Yeah.
Maybe I have 3 younger siblings and maybe you have none.
Mm.
So whilst you can say, let's go out to central London every weekend, I'm gonna say no. And this is the issue. My therapist calls it something like external loci, like how you're viewed from the outside world. Is you have to be so careful of it, because you never really know what someone's going through, how they're divvying up their money. So it's so key that you don't do that. But one of the things I have seen a lot of is financial abuse. And that's why I talk about boundaries a lot. I do Finance Friday on my Instagram, where I anonymously collect dilemmas.
Mm.
And one of the things I see a lot is many people from first generation households who are somewhat being scammed by their parents or guardians to pay far more than they should be paying at home. Sometimes what they're paying is the equivalent to renting outside. And it's so crazy to even say it, but that is truly the case.
Yeah.
And so many of them are afraid, again, to create those boundaries, because they still think they could be 25, but in their head they're still 15.
Hmm.
And then it's me having to train them and coach them to say, you need to set a limit on what you're willing to give, because you have your own future
Yeah.
and to think about. However, I'm not saying that you should leave the people you love in the lurch, but put a limit on it and put a boundary and just say, sorry, this is all I have and this is all I can give at the moment.
Mm.
And don't feel bad about that, because something that happens often as well is a lot of manipulation.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's important.
Whilst you were speaking, the one term that came to me when you're speaking about the first generation and stuff was, especially if you're coming from a different country, was the survival mindset when you were speaking about the scarcity of money, the it's only meant for a certain amount of people or group of people. And then you speaking now in terms of how people view each other when it comes to money and how they may treat each other as well. And like you said already, is you have to know your limits, you have to know your boundaries, and the no that you mentioned earlier can be used in a positive way to help yourself and to not people please or to put yourself in a situation where you're now having to scrape the coins because
Yeah.
you've put yourself in a place because you wanted to live up to the expectation that is presented to you by people you may not know, people you do know. But no, thank you, Bola. That was hmm, powerful.
Hey, this is Bola Sol, and you're tuned into the Check In with podcast.
Which leads me to say to you, or ask you, I should say, speak on delayed gratification from a financial perspective.
Ooh. I'll start by giving a story.
Please.
And it's so funny because now I'm here. It's always fine when you're there, but it's so hard in the process. I'm the youngest.
Sorry, Walla. Say that one more time because that's a gem that you just said.
Oh,
That's a
thank
gem.
you. As I say, it's so easy to say this when you're here, which is where I am now, because I'm now at the point where it's not a problem. At the time, it was incredibly hard. Um, so I just remember I'm the youngest of six siblings, and I remember just before 30, I really wanted a property.
Yeah.
Oh man, but I wanted the new car. I wanted a new car badly.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling like, oh wow, everyone has a nice car. Again, my siblings are 6 to 14 years older than me.
Yeah.
So I'm not that they're not in my age group. Again, so what does that also mean? They're not in my salary range.
Hmm.
They are in completely different places. So I'm seeing BMWs, Range Rovers. And again, this isn't even just from friends, this is family.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling up every time when we're having a family gathering in a hoopty. And it was the hardest thing in the world because I just thought I can actually, with the money I had and the credit I had, like the credit score,
Yeah.
I could get a nice car. And I kept saying, Bola, this will be, kind of used against you once you want to get a mortgage.
Mm.
And I had to stick with the hoopty. It was so hard because again, when you know you can afford something,
Yeah.
oh my gosh,
You
the
just go.
willpower.
Yeah.
Yeah, the willpower it took, especially because saving for a property is not, it wasn't like oh yeah, I saved in 6 months. It takes a while.
It
So it's
does.
constantly seeing the car I wanted. I think I told my friends for 3 years that there was a car I wanted, and they were like, yeah, yeah. Till the day I got the car. Like you finally got the car.
Yeah.
So that, and then I bought my place, and then within 6 months, I got the car. And, my sister was like, oh, new house, new job, not new job, new car. And um, it just, it was so rewarding. I was so grateful to myself that I waited. It felt so much sweeter because I was able to prioritize. And that's what delayed gratification is about, being able to prioritize, knowing what's most important to you and working down from that. And I think enough people don't do that. A quick pen and paper and 1, 2, 3 approach. So, delayed gratification, obviously the ability to resist temptation from an immediate reward in favor of a greater reward in the future.
Yeah.
I would say, this is really linked to self-control in terms of long-term plannings and crucial for financial success. You know, when you think about your savings and investments, when you constantly save money instead of spending it impulsively, it leads to compounded growth over time, hopefully with a good interest rate. But, you also think about things like when people invest, and I'm just talking stocks and shares, for example, you invest and you continue to invest and you don't withdraw that money, you start to see, wow, my money is really starting to grow, even with something as simple as savings. The return on investment may not be as big, and of course, your capital is always at risk when it comes to investing. But just seeing how much it grows can make you feel, so proud. And I think there's something to be said about what that means later on in life. And I'm very grateful that that's something I did. Even with buying a home, I think I wasn't very social for a year.
Mm.
Luckily, it was during the pandemic, so that
Mhm.
made it much easier.
Yeah.
When it came to, I was like, no, I'm not going on any holidays. I'm not, this is really what I want. So this is what I'm going to have to do.
Yeah.
You have to put all of these factors in, but with delayed gratification, you truly have to understand your why. If you don't, it's not going to make sense. Something that constantly comes to me is I'm just like, I just don't want to be embarrassed by my own story.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, and this is no shade to the older generation because they came here during different times. But I'm gonna say anyone who's 55 plus and over, if I see, I can sometimes you can tell the difference between someone who wants to work and someone who has to work. You talk you talk to some of them and they say, how I wish. I hear that a lot.
Mm.
And I always think, oh my gosh, please, Bola, whatever you do, try not to be a how I wish person. You don't even, and that doesn't mean you have to be a millionaire. It doesn't mean you have to make the most money, but it just means you have to be intentional about your decisions. And a lot of that stems from delayed gratification. You know,
Yeah.
when we're younger, and that, we spoke about this earlier, when we're younger, we can say yes a lot more because, maybe we're finally getting money for the first time. I kind of get it, but a time comes where you realize, okay, it's probably time to slow down a bit and think about your decisions and your whys. And that's when, delayed gratification can make a lot of sense. And I also find delayed gratification can stop people getting into debt. So, if you resist the urge to buy something on credit or get a loan,
Yeah.
you avoid interest and fees that you don't necessarily need to be in. Um, what's key as well is, again, this is about prioritization. You have to define what counts as somewhat of an emergency. And I'm not talking about an emergency fund, but the notion of, okay, I'm just going to get a loan because of this. I'm just going to get a loan because of that. I'm just like, that's not a good idea. I've had some people say, oh, I think I need to get a loan because I really need to get away. I don't, and I'm like, that's not a reason. That there has to be cheaper alternatives,
Yeah.
and there usually is. But it's just about if you've explored that. So it's just key that you think about your mindset when it comes to that.
And what would you, because you said so much already, but if you was to give like your 5 crucial top tips for someone who's listening now to be able to manage that delayed gratification, what would you say?
So the first thing I'd say is naturally, I said earlier, your why. So number one, set clear goals. Sorry.
Mhm.
So think about what it is. Are you starting a business? Are you buying a house? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
get clear on your why. And number two, make sure you're budgeting. I cannot say that enough. You want to look at where the small transactions are going as much as the large ones. I think the large ones are a lot easier to find. But you want to look and say, okay, does this make sense? Was this necessary? Or do you want to say, do you know what? I'm not going to do that again because that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Three, automate savings when you do get paid. Just make sure you're putting money away for the future. And four, visualize the reward. Really important. That's something that you need to be able to hold on to. If you can't visualize it, that's what Google Images are there for, and all the other apps that you can find images on, Pinterest, Instagram, social media apps, wherever. And five, I'd say get an accountability partner, but someone who you obviously trust, but who knows you well enough, so that you know that you don't want to hide anything from them. You have those people you speak to that you're like, I have to be honest with you
Yeah.
because you have that level of transparency.
Listeners, you heard it here first from Bola. Top 5 tips when it comes to processing your delayed gratification. Bola, speak to us now on, and this is probably, if not the culmination of everything that you spoke about. Financial planning.
Ooh. So, as a financial advisor, one of the things that we do is we ask people to kind of sit down and, look at defining their short-term goals as well as their medium and long-term.
Yeah.
What you may want to do in a year is very different from what you plan to do in 5 years and 10 years. But, how you get there and the habits you're building in between are crucial. And when you plan financially, it can create so much clarity
Yeah.
and reduce stress, and it can help you make informed decisions about your money. So, for example, if someone says to me this year, "Hey, let's go to Peru," I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say no,
Yeah.
because I know in the next 2 years or so, I'd like to buy a house with my fiance.
Yeah.
For that very reason, I'm very clear on why it's a no. If I had no definition of what my plans look like in the next 1, 3, 5 years, and so on, that could be an easy yes. So, defining it is so important. And then secondly, assess your current situation. Look at your income, for example, as well as your expenses, your savings, your debts and investments. How is all of it moving together? Are you happy with your income, with where the world is now? Even, from the autumn budget, is it still making sense for you?
Mm.
How are you feeling about your expenses? Sometimes I find that some people, they just keep expenses. And I'm talking about those free trials. Sometimes we sign up for things and then we forget. Or it could be something like the gym. It just
Yeah.
keeps rolling and rolling and rolling, as opposed to thinking, how can I make this better, or how can I be more efficient with my money? A big thing I always tell people is just because you're making more money doesn't mean you need to kind of waste more money, for example. Lifestyle creep is a big thing. And I think people think of lifestyle creep in terms of, again, possessions, but it can happen like you want a bigger house. Maybe your kids weren't going to private school before, but now you're making more money. Now they can go to private school. These are all things of like lifestyle creep. Make sure you're reviewing your expenses and your savings. Are you getting the best for your money? Are you actually shopping around? And what are your debts doing? What's the annual percentage rate and interest on that, for example?
Yeah.
Um, and of course, there's budgeting goals, but make sure you're setting smart goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound financial goals. For example, saving a £50,000 deposit in 3 years, or paying off a credit card within 12 months. These are important because once you reach a goal, you want to be able to say, have you hit it? And what's your reason for maybe not hitting it? Or what's your reason for even going beyond the metric you set for yourself? Um, yeah, I think that's the thing. Sometimes people think with finance that, oh, everything's okay if I've been able to go past it, but you want to analyze your habits and understand the cause of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, build an emergency fund. I talk about it all the time. Highlight I've got to highlight the importance of having 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses saved to cover unexpected costs. That's the key. And of course, planning for the future. Just think more pensions, investments. But yeah, I think that common mistakes in financial planning, first of all, is procrastination.
Hmm.
There's a danger in delaying financial planning,
Yeah.
and how time can really magnify both good and bad decisions.
Yeah.
Um, so don't say, oh, that's way in the future, because soon it could, for example, pensions. Some people say, oh, I don't really want to think about that, or that's so far away. Next thing you know, you're saying, yeah, I've got 5 or 10 years left to retire, but maybe you don't have the money you need to retire yet.
Mm.
Another common mistake, people overlook inflation. You really have to account for how inflation can erode the value of your savings, your money over time.
Yeah.
And I'd say, yeah, don't neglect investments. Never rely solely on savings, in my opinion. You always want to look at investing for long-term growth.
Top 5 investments, Bola, that you think or you would suggest people should look into in 2025?
Or not 2025. I think it's hard to put it into a top five because it's that one's so tough because it depends and it's so unique for each person. So many people ask me questions and I need to know so much about
The person.
the person before I'm able to answer. Naturally, make sure that it's tax efficient. Make sure you're using up all your ISO allowance, for example, for
Yeah.
individual savings accounts each year. issue. We've all got a £20,000 allowance, for example. Depending on how old you are, this is not financial advice. You can look into something like bonds and peer-to-peer lending and so on. But
Mm.
again, it's about I'd need to understand your portfolio and also understand your age and the stage you're at, because
Okay.
again, two people could be the same age, but if one has a family and the other one doesn't, and they don't want a family, for example, those could be two different portfolios.
I got you.
Yeah. So
Okay, let me tailor the question then. What accounts in terms of banking should people have or go or head to in 2025?
I think the first thing, you want to make sure that you're getting rewards for who you're currently banking with. Like, what are you actually getting out of it?
Yeah.
Sometimes people are just banking, but I'm like, if you put a certain amount of money in there every month or year, are you getting any benefits, for example? That's really
Mm,
some people, they get paid a good salary and they're just putting money in, they're not thinking about it. And I hate to say I've been one of those people. Whereas some people have fantastic premium accounts. They may be getting paid the same as me, but they've just thought to look into, yeah, I've actually input this amount of money into this account, into this company, this bank. I should get some rewards out of it. So make sure you look at that. Make sure you're getting the best savings rate. But of course, you have to factor in that if it's not an ISA, then you may be taxed on it.
mhm.
I would say that those are just some important things, especially when it comes to an emergency fund. You want cash that is readily available, so you want to make it grow whilst you can. And of course, I'll always say you should make sure you're investing stocks and shares. ISA, like that, to me, it's a bit like an additional pension. Like, you should be putting money in there on the basis that you don't have any debt and you do have an emergency fund. That's important.
Again, because you spoke about having to know the individual before you say anything, does that include the stocks and share ISA? Do you need to know the person before you can recommend which one would be good, or just who to
Um,
do it with?
I Yeah. No, so with stocks and shares ISAs, I always say look into things like fees.
Okay.
So how much does it cost to have an account there, for example?
Yeah.
And how much does it cost to trade? Some platforms, it's like £12, almost £12 per trade, and some free. So you just want to make sure that you are being quite careful with that, because some people, they don't think about that. So you might have access to all the stocks and funds, for example, that you want, but how much is it going to cost you long term? How much are they taking, essentially?
Yeah.
Versus going to somewhere else where it might be a bit more restricted. But yeah, I'd just say, just like savings for everyone, investing, my opinion, is for everyone as well. You can start small, but the key is that you do start.
Key is that you do start. But I'm gonna throw some rapid questions at you now.
Yeah.
Don't you sound nervous?
Mm, Go on. Rapid questions are so interesting, but let me just try to go with the first thing I think.
Okay. So I'm gonna say random sentences, and then you can just go from there. Your money life. Your money life.
Your money life
Mm.
is your past, present, and future.
Expand on that for me.
Your money life is a combination of, what you learned about money growing up, what you saw as well, not just what you learned, but what you saw. And then it's the present, what you're currently doing with your money, and understanding your why. And it's, your future. It's you being in charge of your experiences, and as well, not making excuses for yourself. We can all have excuses, but is it getting you to where you need to be?
What's your favorite chapter in the book?
Understanding how the economy affects you, your money, and your life. I think I say that, and maybe your career. Some people don't understand how certain things affects them, and I really wish they did. So for example, I always joke that my parents used to be like, you should watch the news.
Mm.
And actually got a Financial Times on my desk right now. But when you have an understanding of what certain things mean, it means that you are more prepared,
Yeah.
and maybe the element of surprise is gone slightly. So, I've said at times, based on the economy, or maybe the autumn budget or the spring budget of what we're told, I may say, hey, listen, you've I think a lot of you should really focus on tightening up your emergency fund. Sometimes people can feel like, oh, I have a few months to, get back to the figure I was at. and I might be like, I don't know because this has happened as a result. So that's one of my favorite chapters. If you know what's happening in the world and the economy, you know how it's going to affect you, and you know whether or not you need to kind of like tighten up or loosen up.
But if you could work anywhere remotely in the world, where would it be and why?
Anywhere remotely in the world, where would I work? Wow, I don't really have a dream workplace.
Do you have a location that you visited recently that you're like, yeah, I'd come back here?
I haven't been there. I mean, I'd love to work remotely in Japan.
Okay. No, Japan is, listen.
Yeah, I would. Oh my gosh, yeah. To work for myself, and I say work for myself because it just, I just feel like there isn't enough emphasis on the personalization of
Mm,
financial well-being
yeah.
and what they need. I get we have big banking institutions and things like that, and they need to do what they do, but I'm also like, it's too big and it's too generic, and the 99% always, they don't win. I don't want to say lose, but they don't win. Not saying I'm part of the 1%, but I think someone needs to kind of at least try and teach people like which way to look with their finances and what makes sense and what doesn't.
Do you have a favorite quote, Bola?
Oh, yes. And sometimes this is hard to hear myself. Oh, I'm trying to remember who's by. Actually, no. Oh man, can I say two?
Of course you can. You can say it too.
Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Yeah, that's important. I think sometimes people just assume, oh, it must be easy for you. I know some people have kind of said that to me. It's only like my friends or family will be like, no, Paula works quite hard.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, what's the second one? I think it's by Eleanor Roosevelt about the man in the arena. Oh, I don't, I don't want to get it wrong. It's such a fantastic quote, but I think so often it's easy to criticize the man in the arena from the audience. I'm like, what? You have no
No
idea
idea.
what the person is doing in the arena. No idea what they have to do.
Yeah.
It's so easy for you to stand there, and that's the thing. And again, don't. And I guess those two go hand in hand. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Because are you the man in the arena of your life when you're standing in the audience?
Wow, that's a powerful quote. Bola, what's your favorite cuisine?
Favorite cuisine. I have a favorite meal. Do I have a favorite cuisine? Oh no, the very thing I thought of first, I could just feel my Nigerian people saying you're such a sellout. I think it has to be Caribbean food.
I mean, we do. Anyway, go on. Sorry. Caribbean
It
food.
has to. Are you Caribbean?
Yeah, Jamaica.
Yeah, I grew up in Brixton, right? It's just it's such a perfect blend between like just it's sweet but not too sweet for me. It's fantastic. My favorite, yeah, one of my favorite meals is, curry goat.
It has to. It had to be. If you didn't say Caribou, I would have been so shocked.
Yeah, oh my God. Curry goat is such a favorite. I'm actually heading down to South London soon, and I miss it because there's just obviously growing up in Brixton, you have quick access to the culture,
Oh,
the
100%.
the quickest access in
The
the world,
quickest. The
and I
quickest.
and I miss it so much. But that's what makes it great when I go back there. But yeah, I do think it is Caribbean food.
I got a couple more, and then
Oh,
we'll let you go. I'm gonna say this one. God met me.
oh, God met me, and I opened the door. My career right now is not conventional. I'm currently somewhat, I am self-employed. I'm a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Um, and I also work for myself. I consult with other businesses. I do speaking engagements, and it takes a lot of faith. This type of career was not available 10 years ago. I work remotely. I have a mortgage, and
Mhm.
somehow I'm able to sustain myself every single month.
Mm.
And then some, and still kind of plan for the future. And I'm very grateful. And they say God met me, and I opened the door, because there's been times where God has tried to meet me, and I did not open the door at all, even with opportunities. And it was just kind of fear, a different type of scarcity mindset, which was like, how could this be possible for me? You have to ask yourself, why not?
The Bola Sol show.
Mm.
Talk to me about that. Talk to me about, I guess, where you see it going and just the process to actually having a show.
Oh, that's thank you. That's such a great question. The Bola Soul show. Do you know what? I don't know where it's going, and that's an example of God meeting me. I do not know, and I love, and that's fun for me
Yeah.
because so much of my life and so much of life, not just for me but for other people, means you have to know where it's going. With the Bola Soul show, I'm really like with God. Okay, whatever you bring, I'll take it. And if it, for example, if it's something that it only ever happens in London, fine. If it
Yeah.
only ever happens in the UK, fine. If it goes worldwide, it goes to, I don't know, West Africa or
Mm.
Nigeria, that would be fantastic. But goes to certain parts of the world, great. And if it doesn't, fine, because I also feel like the show is not for me. I feel like it's a bit of a service I have or something I'm supposed to provide. I never planned to do the Bola Soul show. I said this last year when we did it at the Excel in October with UK Black Business Show.
Yeah.
The Bola Soul show wasn't a dream I had for myself. It wasn't mine, which is why I leave it to God because I still don't feel like it's mine. I just feel like it's the thing I'm supposed to do.
I'm going to ask you to do one more thing before you go.
Yeah.
And you can say no.
Okay.
Because you've been blessed with the financial literacy and God has placed you in a position where you're able to not only manage wealth and finance, but you're able to give us, his children, the access to manage our own finances. Could you leave us with a prayer when it comes to wealth and finances for 2025? Not even just for the year, but just in general. I'd really
Mm.
love that.
Father God, we thank you for all you've given us. We know that many of us have more than so many people in the world. And I just pray for the spirit of contentment to always know us. I pray that we don't get caught up in the material possessions of this world, but to know you and to have wisdom to know you properly. And I just pray that out of our hearts abundance flows. May we know what true riches is in this lifetime and never confuse it. We ask for your discernment on what that is, Father God. I pray that we never fall in love with money, but we continually fall in love with you and represent you, Father God. And just pray that we never forget your teachings. And may we just have a richness that can only come from you in Jesus' name. Amen.
In Jesus' name, amen. Bola, someone's heard you today and they're just like, I need to get in touch with her. What is the best way to contact you?
Oh, the best way. Finance Fridays, if it's a financial question or dilemma, Finance Fridays, I put it up every Thursday evening and then answer it. Or I have an email, hello@bolasol.co.uk. It's also on my Instagram. You can find me there.
And your book,
Yeah.
please tell us
Oh my gosh.
how can we get the book? Where do we get it? Yeah, tell us.
Oh, sometimes people say I'm one of the worst promoters ever. Um, Your Money Life, you can get it. And I'm just gonna say Penguin. Go on penguin.co.uk and just search Your Money Life and you will find a copy there. The reason I say that is because there's so many outlets and I think it's very easy to focus on the big ones. But there are so many different outlets you can find once you go on Penguin's website to look for the book. And you can choose to get it from various stores because we've got to support our local communities. So maybe if they have it
You do.
well, yeah.
Yeah. And is there anything else the listeners need to know that's happening for Bola Soul in 2025 that they need to be a part of?
Oh, the Bola Sol show is coming on the 3rd of May, and I'm this year, and I'm so excited to work on that because that's gonna be a family edition. So I want to have intergenerational conversations. So yeah, look out for information about that.
Amazing. Listeners, I have been your host, Calvin Anderson. We have had the impeccable and opulent Bola Soul today. Have a good night. Take care. Speak soon. God bless.